See if this works. Hello?
Good morning, everyone. Test mic.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Good morning, everyone. Test mic.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Test mic.
Test.
See if this works. Hello?
Test.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Test mic.
Test. Yep.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Test mic.
Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone. Test mic.
Can you hear me? Test. Good morning.
See if this works. Hello?
Test. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Test microphone.
Good morning,
Mic.
Can you hear me? Test.
dear
Good morning.
friends,
See if this
colleagues,
works.
and partners. It's our pleasure to welcome you today to WHO for this first global NTD Partners Meeting. And we are happy to have with you today Dr. Jerome Solomon, ADG for UCN. But we are very happy to have also the Director General, Dr. Tedros, with us for the second time after the meeting in March on skin NTDs. He's joining us today again for the global NTD Partners Meeting. I think we don't know to tell you how much WHO is committed and involved at every level. And we are very happy. Thank you, DG, thank you, ADG, for coming. And today we will have a welcome note from Dr. Solomon before we have the opening remark from Dr. Tedros. After that, we have the short video and we will go to the photo group before presentation because, you know, this agenda is very tight. You have seen the INB meeting just next door and so many other things happening. And we are very lucky to have him with us. But before that, I will give the floor to Dr. Camilla to give some housekeeping information.
Thank you, Dr. Sose. We'll go through the housekeeping slides very quickly before we can hand back. We've got the slides up. Thank you, Dr. Sose. We'll go through the housekeeping slides very quickly before we can hand back.
We are seeing the ILB here.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sose. We'll go through the housekeeping slides very quickly before we can hand back.
We are seeing that. This is an integration. To tell you how health emergencies is important, you need to make sure that you work together at all levels. And but as you can see, we have over 200 people in the room and 180 connected. It's a big meeting. Also, we had to limit the number of participants by invitation. So it's really important. So we are back to our room. Camilla, please.
Thank you very much. The agenda will be shown on the screens throughout the day. As Sose just said, we're changing things around a little bit this morning. So the group photo is before Albus's presentation. And then there is interpretation available in the room and online. If you have any questions for the panelists, please go to the Slido and we will make sure that the chair of each session gets the questions. We'd also like you to be able to tweet or follow us on social media, and there's some hashtags available for you to use: Stronger Together Towards 2030, Ending NTDs, and Ending the Neglect. So do you want to show the interpretation slide just one more time, Farah? I think just it's probably the most important. There's English, French and Spanish interpretation available, and you can go through Zoom to get to it. Thank you very much. And back to you, Sose.
Thank you, Camilla. Let me now introduce Professor Jérôme Salomon. Many of you already know him as Director General of Health in France when he was representing France in many of the governing bodies, but he was appointed recently as Assistant Director General for Universal Health Coverage, Communicable, Non-Communicable Disease, Mental Health is a big portfolio, but it's a good platform to integrate and to be more efficient. So, Jérôme, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Dr. Sose, dear Dr. General, dear Tedros. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, good morning and welcome to everyone here in person and online with us for this meeting of the Global NTD Programme. This global meeting marks the third Global Partners Meeting and the first one since the launch of the NTD roadmap in 2021. It's great to see so many colleagues in the room and online from all of the many stakeholders in NTDs, from national health authorities to pharma industry, from donors to implementing and technical partners, from academia to patient associations, to WHO colleagues from regional and country offices. The Global NTD Programme is made up of a diverse community, and it's great that there is a representation here for this meeting. There is incredible value to bringing partners together and being able to have a frank discussion on where we are as a community, focusing on progress, but more importantly, also on the challenges. It's only together that we can overcome all the obstacles and move together. It's also a pleasure for me to be with you all for the first time since starting as Assistant Director General, Universal Health Coverage, UCN, so communicable and non-communicable diseases. I very much look forward to working with you all and hearing the outcomes of the meeting. I would now like to hand over to our esteemed Director General, Dr. Tedros, who will give his opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Jérôme. I would actually like to start by apologizing. I think the line at the reception is long, and I have seen many of you lining up there. We're hosting many meetings today. I think this should be the largest. I checked with colleagues. And almost all meeting rooms are full, not only this meeting, but INB and other meetings and visitors as well. So we will take it as a lesson anyway to improve in the next time when a big group comes, how to handle it quickly. So I will go to my speech with that apology, but we will improve next time. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, it's a pleasure to be with you today and to welcome you all to WHO. Neglected tropical diseases are an issue of great personal importance to me because I began my public health career working on schistosomiasis, human African trypanosomiasis, leishmaniasis, onchocerciasis, before moving into malaria. This gathering illustrates what WHO is all about. Partners coming together to leverage their collective strengths to address global health challenges that none of us could address alone. A multifaceted challenge like neglected tropical diseases takes a multifaceted approach, and that's what we bring together. And together, we have much to be proud of in our fight against NTDs. Since the beginning of last year, 13 countries have been validated or certified for eliminating a neglected tropical disease. Bangladesh, Benin, DRC, Equatorial Guinea, Ghana, Laos, Malawi, Mali, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Togo, Uganda, and Vanuatu. And as you know, we now stand on the threshold of eradicating guinea worm. When the guinea worm eradication program began in 1986, there were an estimated 3.5 million human cases in 21 countries. Last year, just 13 cases were reported from 4 countries. This incredible achievement is thanks in no small part to the leadership and partnership of President Jimmy Carter, to whom we all owe great gratitude and respect. And I hope Dr. Ijaz will pass our gratitude and respect to him and his family. I would also like to take this opportunity to send my best wishes to First Lady Rosalind Carter, who was diagnosed with dementia just a couple of weeks ago. And we wish the family and the First Lady all the best. So in the fight against NTDs, we have many reasons for celebration and for optimism. But our work is not done, and we still face many challenges. To meet these challenges, we must do more of what we know works, which is to work together even more closely and to bring more coherence to our work. The 2030 NTD roadmap gives us a clear direction, a clear mandate, and a clear opportunity to alleviate suffering for more than 1 billion people. And our work against NTDs bears fruit in many other areas of health. The infrastructure and capacities we build for NTDs take us further down the road towards universal health coverage and the sustainable development goals. NTD interventions reach the poorest, the most remote, and the most isolated communities in the world, and are often the only contact these communities have with established health services. The everyday heroes who plan and deliver these interventions are contributors to the achievement of many other SDGs, from inequality to clean water and sanitation, to innovation and sustainability. NTD interventions are a bridge that brings millions closer to help. The work you do as a community helps to build and maintain that bridge every single day. Of course, we can always make that bridge stronger and wider. In particular, As we move forward together, I urge all partners to focus on making the three strategic shifts outlined in the global NTD roadmap. First, to shift from process to impact for higher accountability and a more holistic approach to address health needs. Second, to shift from this specific approach towards integration, mainstreaming within national health systems, and cross-cutting interventions. And third, the shift from externally driven programs towards greater country ownership to boost the viability and sustainability of NTD programs. Thank you all again for all of your commitment and my very best wishes for an engaging and fruitful meeting. I thank you, and back to you, Sose.
Thank you very much, DJ. I think the message is very clear, and we all need to make sure that we undertake the necessary shift we just highlighted, and working together in a stronger partnership, in a more coordinated, more coherent manner, making sure that also we work based on country leadership and ownership for greater impact, integration with existing platform and mechanisms at country level as well. And now we have a short video on success stories before we go for the group photo. Farah, please. Thank you.
WHO and the global NTD community are working together towards one goal: a world free of neglected tropical diseases. WHO works with countries to help put in place the actions and frameworks that will benefit their people. We must also pay tribute to the unsung heroes in the community.
Le jour du lancement, les premiers jours et le ravitaillement, je suis obligé de couvrir les 15 villages. Et quand on réunit les 15 villages, c'est vraiment des kilomètres et des kilomètres. J'aime mon activité avec passion parce que vraiment depuis l'enfance, la santé m'a toujours plu. Ce qui fait que remplir ces tâches quotidiennement, ça ne me gêne pas. Ça fait un plaisir de rendre service à la communauté.
O distrito Yanomami é formado por 37 polos base. Esse polo base é uma estrutura administrativa e territorial que envolve um número determinado de aldeias. Inicialmente nós fizemos um levantamento epidemiológico e delimitamos a área endêmica. Nós elegemos os indivíduos que necessitam de tratamento. Essa população elegível são todos os indivíduos que ali estão, exceto as gestantes e as crianças. Para que a criança tome a medicação, ela tem que ter 5 anos de idade ou mais, 90 centímetros de altura ou mais, ou 15 quilos de peso ou mais.
O tratamento que está sendo proporcionado na comunidade, eles estão aceitando com muita satisfação, né? Existe uma parcela de recusa, mas a grande maioria participa. Olá, boa tarde. Boa tarde. E aí, tudo bem, Rena? É o seguinte, nós somos da equipe do Odisseia Yanomami, né, de Roraima, e nós viemos aqui para trabalhar 2 dias na Somaloca. com vacinação, tomada de oncocercose, pesamento.
E o Yanomami, para você tratar um oncocercose, é uma doença que eles não estão vendo. Porque está na pele, pode estar no olho, entendeu? Então eles não estão vendo a doença, então eles acham que não estão doentes. Então a oncocercose para mim é um grande desafio, porque eu tenho que correr atrás de quase mil e poucos Yanomamis em 90 dias.
This project is about youth eradication in the Congo Basin, targeting Cameroon, Central African Republic and Congo, principally the indigenous population, that is the Baka in Cameroon, the Aka in Central African Republic and in Congo. So we are doing this in relation to the WHO roadmap.
Within the framework of the mass distribution campaign of azithromycin to the population of our health district, we were given the task of mobilizing the population in order to raise awareness so that they could adhere to the intake of the drug. And the planning put in place was based on several activities such as door-to-door, communication through megaphones, communication through the media and social networks.
WHO wants NTD treatments to be sustainable and is working with partners and donors to ensure this, building global collectives and platforms for advocacy.
Core NTD and the NTD Support Center are honored to be part of the NTD community of partners working to eliminate NTDs.
Whether we're in Atlanta or out here in the world like we are in Sudan, the Carter Center is committed to battling neglected tropical diseases.
Central to the Global Schistosomiasis Alliance is our firm belief that by working together, we will reach our elimination targets sooner.
On behalf of the communities we serve in 27 countries and the philanthropists who generously support NTD elimination through the N Fund, we commit to the WHO 2030 roadmap goals.
The U.S. Agency for International Development is proud to be working alongside over 30 countries in their fight against neglected tropical diseases.
Sightsavers is fully committed to NTDs, and we're committed to the WHO roadmap, which shows the way.
The NNN's working groups and annual conference bring diverse communities together to foster cross-sectoral collaborations to beat NTDs.
We at Youth Combating NTDs are committed to the WHO roadmap on neglected tropical diseases.
Global Health Innovative Technology Fund remains committed to investing in research for innovative technology to fight NTDs through partnerships between Japan and overseas.
The last few years have been challenging for the global NTD community. Now we need to reverse the delays and look to the future. We must invest in innovative operations and financing solutions that foster integration and cross-sectoral collaboration. We must boost global support for countries with the highest NTD burdens, and we must continue to facilitate country ownership and sustainability of NTD programs through new approaches to financing and implementation. Together, we can foster sustainable interventions that will allow us to reach our 2030 goal of a world free of NTDs.
thank you very much for the video. And looking at the communities we are able to reach with all the community health workers, it just reminds me, and I was telling to our team working on health system and primary health care, at that time I was working on outbreak control in remote area. I was telling them, come with me, you will know where to start primary health care and universal health coverage. And looking at everything we are doing, I believe that NTD's intervention should be a clear tracer for universal health coverage and real primary health care. And we need to make sure that this will happen. And I'm glad to tell you that the DG would like to stay and listen to the first presentation. We're trying to preserve his time, but he's happy to listen to presentation from Albis on progress made, and let's make sure that we keep, on the time allocated. So Albis, ready to start?
Yes.
Yes. Also, we have some colleagues from UK who couldn't arrive on time because of flight cancellation yesterday, but they will join us in the afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, I'm giving this presentation about progress encountered since the progress made and challenges encountered since the beginning of since the launch of the roadmap. It is also aims at introducing some of the concepts that then will be discussed today and tomorrow in the different sessions. Okay, as you know, the roadmap is the reference document. It is aimed at guiding global efforts against NTDs for this decade. It was launched in 2021 in January for World NTD Day after being endorsed by World Health Assembly. At the beginning of this year, in January, we published the global report on NTDs that summarizes the main progress and challenges during the first 2 years of implementation of the roadmap. And then we have web pages and dashboards that we periodically update with the latest information. In short, we can say that progress has been made since the launch of the roadmap. However, we also encountered many challenges, and work is ongoing to overcome these challenges. I'm going to discuss progress and challenges through the lens of the 4 overarching targets and the 3 pillars of the roadmap. As you know, the roadmap has a complex M&E framework with over 70 different indicators. The main one, the top line targets and indicators are called overarching, and they include a reduction in the number of people requiring NTD interventions, a reduction in burden of disease calculated in DALYs, an increase in the number of countries having eliminated at least one NTD, and then progress towards the 2 diseases that are targeted for eradication, dracunculitis and Yos. The first overarching target coincides with the SDG indicator 3.3.5 and therefore also contributes to the SDG monitoring evaluation framework. The roadmap envisages a target of a 90% reduction in population requiring NTD intervention between 2010 and 2030. What we achieved over the past decade is a reduction of 25% from 2.19 to 1.65 billions. The second overarching target is reduction in DALYs related to NTDs. And the roadmap envisages a reduction of 75% between 2030 and 2030. We are currently not in a position to report on this indicator because the latest DALYs data date back to 2019. What we can say is that in the few years preceding the launch of the roadmap, we observed a steady decline in burden of disease. New data will be published by the end of this year or beginning of next year, which will enable tracking progress during the first year of implementation of the roadmap. The second target, it was mentioned by the Director General, is number of countries having eliminated at least one NTD. Their target is 100 countries by 2030. As of today, we have 49 countries, with several countries having eliminated more than one NTD. For example, Togo, 4 diseases, Benin and Ghana, 3 diseases, and Mexico, 3 diseases as well. This slide shows the progress towards this goal. And we can see that in spite of a sort of slowdown during the COVID years, WHO was able to validate, verify, or certify 8 countries in 2022 and 5 in 2023, 4 of which just last month in May. The last overarching target is about eradication of dracunculiasis and yaws. We have a look at dracunculiasis, the map on the left. We can see that a lot of progress has been made, with only 5 endemic countries remaining and 1 country in pre-certification, Sudan. In 2022, only 13 cases were reported, and in December, the Democratic Republic of the Congo was certified as free of transmission. For yaws on the right, the situation is more complex. The disease is more widespread across several WHO regions. We can say that intensified surveillance, capacity strengthening, and MDA is being implemented in countries reporting cases in 3 regions, the African region, Southeast Asia, and Western Pacific, while other countries in these 3 regions and in the region of the Americas are compiling information in order to develop dossier and be ready for certification, therefore hopefully joining India, that is so far the only country that has been certified as free of transmission in 2016. Can you move? Okay. What about the challenges encountered in these first 2.5 years? We can say that these years have been marked by 2 main challenges: the disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and a changing funding landscape. With regard to COVID-19, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic had a direct impact on population, but also an indirect impact by disrupting health systems. And of course, NTD programs were not spared. Disruption to NTD programs resulted in reduced implementation of community-based interventions, restricted access to services offered by health facilities, slower response to NTD outbreaks, and delayed supply chains for NTD health products from manufacturing down to distribution at country level. As a consequence, the number of people treated for NTDs decreased between 2019 and 20, followed by a small rebound in 2021. This slide shows the number of people treated through preventive chemotherapy, mass drug administration. And you can see that in spite of having achieved more than 1 billion people treated for the 4 years preceding the COVID-19 pandemic, we observed a marked decrease between 19 and 20 of 34%, only followed by a small increase of 12% in 2021. The same we observed for diseases that are managed through individual case management, and generally speaking, we noted a decrease in number of people detected, screened, and managed through active and passive case finding, and then a small increase in 2021. We are still compiling data for 2022, except for a few diseases that you can see. The second big challenge was a challenging funding landscape. We can say that reduced funding to NTD programs globally hampered NTD operations at country level, but also impacted on coordination and cohesive implementation of disease control strategies at global level. In addition to these 2 main challenges, I would like to remind you that we still have persistent programmatic challenges that pose a risk towards the timely achievement of the targets. These include slow progress in some countries, uneven progress across the 20 diseases, with some countries performing relatively well against a disease, but not so well against others. Underlying risk factors such as poverty, climate change, migration, population displacement, rapid population growth, and limited access to areas affected by conflict, insecurity, and political instability, especially for the diseases in the last mile towards eradication or elimination, and there will be a session dedicated to that. Let us now have a look at the 3 pillars of the roadmap that provide a more qualitative assessment of progress made. As you know, the roadmap is built around 3 pillars. The first one is accelerating programmatic action, which is about filling technical, normative, and operational gaps. The second pillar is intensifying cross-cutting approaches, and therefore it's about integration among NTD programs, between NTD programs and other health programs, between health sector and other sectors, and then mainstreaming within the national health system. The third pillar is about sustainability, country ownership, and stakeholders coordination. So with regard to the first pillar, we can say that many normative and guidance products were published by WHO over the past two years and a half, including 4 sets of guidelines, which, as you know, are the most complex and ambitious normative document published by WHO. And you see an example on the right, the one on visceral leishmaniasis. I would also like to inform you that in January this year, Nigeria, on behalf of other 32 member states, submitted to WHO a dossier for inclusion of NOMA in the list of NTDs. And the Strategic and Technical Advisory Group for NTDs is currently reviewing the dossier. In terms of global advocacy, over the past 2 years, we witnessed the endorsement of World NTD Day by the World Health Assembly, the adoption of the Abu Dhabi Declaration on eradication of guinea worm disease, and the Kigali Declaration on NTDs, both in 2022. With regard to capacity strengthening, in 2021, we launched an NTD channel on the Open WHO platform, which is currently offering 47 multilingual courses in different languages with over 100,000 enrolled learners. Again, on accelerating programmatic action, progress was made also with regard to access to medicine and diagnostics, which many memorandum of understanding that were signed in 2021 and 22, including the extension of the donation to a new disease, albendazole for cystic echinococcus. We also worked on improved availability of quality assured medicines with 3 pharmaceutical products, 1 formulation of albendazole, 1 of praziquantel, and 1 of ivermectin, added to the list of WHO pre-qualified products, therefore bringing the total to 9. Several new drugs are currently under evaluation on different diseases, on human African trypanosomiasis, mycetoma, onchocerciasis, soil-transmitted helminthiasis, and others. And 18 target product profiles for diagnostics were developed in order to define how these diagnostics should be in order to accompany programs towards the endpoint goals of elimination and eradication. The second pillar is about intensifying cross-cutting approach. Over these past 2.5 years, we witnessed the expansion of preventive chemotherapy to other diseases, for example, tenisis, thanks to the guidelines published in 2021 on the left. The progressive rollout of the skin NTD approach, and we had, as Dr. Sose was reminding us, a meeting in this room just a few months back. Progress is also being recorded on One Health and water sanitation and hygiene. And then improved coordination on arboviral infections, thanks to the launch of the Global Arbovirus Initiative. With regard to the M&E framework, and there will be presentation on that, work has been carried out in order to ensure that we report on all roadmap indicators and on all 20 diseases, which is not yet the case, improving data visualization and accessibility through dashboards, and then facilitating integration and mainstreaming of NTD data into national health information systems. You can see here a couple of dashboards that we have on WHO website providing information on roadmap indicators and country profiles with regard to NTDs. The third pillar is perhaps the most difficult to measure. It's about country ownership, sustainability, coordination. Let us have a look at what happened. Certainly, we can note the publication of the WHO Sustainability Framework and the promotion of its use in a number of countries, and there will be a session dedicated to that. The creation or expansion of global platforms and events in order to strengthen coordination and information sharing amongst all stakeholders, inclusion of NTDs in universal health coverage and primary healthcare policy documents, and finally, the increased awareness that maintenance of essential health services during health crisis is a priority. And this, of course, is certainly not limited to NTDs alone, but NTDs should be part of this new architecture about pandemic preparedness in order to ensure that essential health services does not be interrupted by future health crises, should they happen. And also that sustainable funding is essential to achieving the goals set out in the roadmap. A few lessons learned for consideration and as a sort of introduction to the different panels and for consideration by the different panelists and by all participants. Certainly, the recovery from COVID, from the disruptions caused by COVID-19 is a priority, as well as recovery from all other challenges, including the financial shortages. fill normative gaps, expand the arsenal of medicine diagnostics and tools, and strengthen data collection, increase the cohesiveness and efficiency of NTD interventions by investing in strategies that foster integration and cross-sectoral collaboration. And then, of course, we need to continue to facilitate country ownership and sustainability of NTD programs through innovative policies and financing approaches. By doing so, we will be able to accelerate progress and meet the SDG target and the roadmap target as well. And this is just the last slide to show that, to say that progress was made possible by the joint efforts of the global NTD community. So all what has been presented is a joint effort from all of us. And to conclude with the motto for this event, stronger together towards 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Aldis, for a very comprehensive presentation highlighting the progress and challenges. It will really set the scene for the next session, where we will be looking more deeply on what we need to do to better work together in terms of coordination, partnership, working jointly, working together, but also for integration and acceleration of our intervention to meet the target of 2030. Thank you once again. I think now we have the photo group, Chris Black, Nathan Lesord. Give us orders. How do we do that?
Yes. Yes. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. Can we please return to your seats? We need to restart the meeting. Thank you. Please return to your seats. Thank you. We need to restart the meeting. Thank you.
Welcome back to the room. And thank you, Albis, once again for the very comprehensive presentations. I think it will be important to have it when we will be working in the different sessions to make sure that we use an evidence-based approach, starting with a roadmap to real progress and challenges and how we can work together to accelerate implementation, overcome the challenges. And it's my task now to talk about our strategic priorities, but linked to the functional review we undertook during the first semester of following my appointment as director of the NTD program. So it was very important for me. So get ready to be challenged. My role is to challenge everybody, WHO partners, countries. You know, sometimes I'm a diplomat, sometimes I'm a soldier. So, but let's be ready for actions. Everything we do, if it doesn't lead to action, for me, it's not useful, it's not important. Let's make sure that we move together. And so when I started, clearly, you know, as Tedros was saying, I also started my public health journey with NTDs. And I left NTDs in the late 90s. At the time, we stopped Guinea worm transmission in Senegal, exactly in 98. And of course, working in so many other diseases, leprosy, schisto, and others, that I joined WHO working in malaria. Again, because also I've spent a lot of time working on malaria. But also the last 10 years, I've been working in health emergencies and now back to NTDs. And when I look at everything that happened, you know, within the NTD community, but also outside the NTD community, I felt that the first priority was advocacy and visibility, both within WHO and outside WHO, because when I just compare, you know, the work in health emergency and NTDs, I felt that there was a certain level of neglect even within WHO, because every day, every week, we were talking about health emergency, even the small outbreak. When I look at the money we're spending on outbreak to stop just one outbreak, like Ebola in Uganda, you know, within 4 months, more than 20 million, while so many people in Uganda, you know, suffering from NTDs. And I look at the fund from the contingent fund for emergency we approved for the Horn of Africa to respond to humanitarian crisis. It was 16.5 million. The first meeting I had with the NTD community was on viral leishmaniasis, and there was no money for that, for elimination, as there's something wrong. We cannot continue, you know, working like that. While we approved 16.5 million for 5 country offices in East Africa, and there was nothing on viral leishmaniasis, nothing on the humanitarian response plan, you know. So that's why it was important for me to spend time talking to all of you, you know, traveling to countries, talking to donors who are representing their countries in so many boards, including Global Fund, Gavi, and others. And clearly partnership is critical. It was critical in global health, making sure that we continue, building stronger partnership was extremely important, and this will continue to be a priority. But as I said many times, when I just ask how much do we need, to implement the roadmap, because looking at the slogan for the World NTD Day, where we were calling for investment, I asked the question, I had no answer. I said, okay, if you don't know how much we need, how can we ask people to invest? Or what are they going to gain out of this investment? So I'm sure we will have a session on that. But for me, everything is interrelated. The advocacy is the costing, and we need to be very evidence-based, oriented to be able to speak in a very credible way. And expanding our donor-based sustainable funding is important. We have so many committed partners, and this is really, I can tell you, I have never seen this level of commitment from any other, global health program, including health emergencies. So for health emergencies, member states are all scared to get the pandemic. Of course, they will talk about it all the time, and they'll put money for that. But the level of commitment and passion I've seen in coming back to NTDs is really incredible. And thank you all for your commitment. And clearly, leadership for WHO is extremely important. I know we have had many challenges, but we need a new start, with stronger leadership, stronger partners, coordination, and mutual trust. This is really something I strongly believe on. Of course, everything we need in terms of technical product is extremely important, but without all these components, whatever the technical work we are going to do, if you are not able to reposition the entities within the global health architecture and funding mechanisms, you are not going to go far. We need to change it together. So in terms of advocacy, I was saying everything we do need to lead to actions. We shouldn't be just happy because there is a word and there's NTD mentioned in the G7 declaration. We should go beyond that to make sure that when we do advocacy for actions, and this is translated in concrete action. When we talk about NTDs in universal health coverage, we know exactly the role we are playing. We are not begging to be part of the platform. We are already contributing. We want NTDs to be used as a clear tracer for universal health coverage, because if you are not able to deliver NTD intervention, what kind of universal health coverage are you going to achieve? And we need to be bold on that, moving together. The same when you talk about pandemic preparedness, are we going to invest on the pandemic funds and sitting down to wait for the next pandemic? Or are we going to address the NTDs, also communicable disease and so on? This needs to be very clear, and that's why for me, talking to donors countries, but also to recipient countries who need to take into account the NTDs cross-cutting issues when they work on the global fund proposal or pandemic preparedness proposal will be extremely important. And we have so many other platforms we will talk about during the meeting. And partner engagement, as I said, to make sure that we address specific disease target, but also the cross-cutting target and everything we need to do together. And clearly there was a gap if you look at the roadmap, from the roadmap to implementation, because when you don't have an implementation plan, it's very difficult to be able to coordinate and guide actions. You have seen it in other programs. The roadmap is a good blueprint, but without an implementation plan, it's very difficult to even have a clear M&E plan, because you are asking the M&E. I always compare M&E with a security plan. If you ask people to have a security plan for a building and they don't see a building, how are they going to do the security plan? It's very difficult. And if nobody in the building is contributing to the security, the security plan will be useless. That's why we need to look at M&E very critically to make sure that we all do this specific contribute to that, but also taking into account existing platform. This has happened in other programs. In 2008, we have to develop a global malaria action plan with clear pillars around, coordination with partners, co-sharing, strong pillar on making sure that everybody comes together with an implementation plan. So to maintain and expand donor community, we cannot just do advocacy for NTD in an isolation. We need to, bring the link and bridges with all the existing platform, as I just said, emergency preparedness and response, SDGs, primary health care, and make sure that we have the mechanisms plan to accelerate the implementation of the roadmap. Yeah. And we have programs heavily relying on medicine donation. This is an important contribution from pharma, and we need to acknowledge it. At the same time, we need to make sure that we have transition mechanism for more sustainable funding using, of course, global existing funding mechanisms, as I said, but also making sure that at country level, we have the right domestic investment, not only from the health sector, but across so many sectors because of the nature of the determinant of NTDs. And another priority is really to work on WHO leadership to build one WHO and one global NTD program. And this is a clear need for culture shift from WHO to move away from NTD department to global NTD program. If you have a global malaria program, global TB program, global HIV program, you have the health emergency program, which is one program across the T-level of the organization, how can you call a so important, area of work, WHO department, NTD? Who cares about NTD department? You want a global NTD program. It's very important because every partner, every country, all the communities, they need to play their part. That's why having clear coordination mechanism where everybody is represented and equally represented, everybody being accountable, starting with WHO and all partners, countries being accountable is very important. Partnership cannot be built without accountability, transparency, and predictability and equity. And that's why what I want to build with you and move together with you on that. That's why it's so important for me to start this exercise with a clear functional review from, on how WHO is working, but not only WHO, how partners are working with WHO. This is extremely important. So this is not only about WHO, it's about all of us. How are we working together and what needs to change? We have had the roadmap, but since the roadmap, have we really changed the way we are working to implement the shift? Everybody continue doing business as usual. I'm not here for business as usual. Otherwise, you don't need me. You continue to do your business as usual. I go back, do health emergencies or something else. And but I wanted to reflect very quickly on this slide. You can see, just using some of our key donors and looking at the trend in terms of funding. This is a very unpredictable. Leadership has a cost. If you want serious WHO leadership, you have to invest seriously, both inside from WHO and also from outside from our partners to make sure that we are in a position to fulfill our role. So I wanted all of us to use really an evidence-based approach to be able to do a proper functional review because we all agreed to implement the three main strategy shift for the roadmap, moving from process to impact measurement and moving from vertical to horizontal programming. It doesn't mean you are going to lose our expertise in this specific. We need to be very clear, but we need to be more coherent in terms of horizontal planning, but also making sure that everything we are doing is country-driven and we work together to implement the plan at country level. So these are really my entry point for the functional review. And I would like to really highlight the progress mentioned already by Albis. These are real incredible progress in terms of service delivery, but also impact, having already 49 countries that have eliminated at least one disease. We need to build on the progress, but also address critically the challenges in a very open and frank manner. We have the tools to change the situation, and we will change it together. And as I said, 2 years after the roadmap, it's very important to have this kind of, review, but it's not like a summative evaluation. It's more a formative evaluation where we look at where we are and what needs to be improved to change the way we are working, and to really find the most efficient way to implement the roadmap by leveraging existing platform and partnership within and beyond the NTD community, and to make sure that together we facilitate the implementation of the 3 shifts in the roadmap. So I would like to thank all of you. We have received feedback from 135 organizations. This is a lot, and both interviews, but also we submitted 176 forms in French and English and received feedback from lists of health representatives, WHO offices, country offices, and pharmaceutical companies, donor, and implementing partners. This is extremely rich. Oh, it was important to make sure that we do a strategic analysis of all feedback and to really be very action-oriented from the analysis, because what we are going to do is not to go clearly individually to see all feedbacks, but the most important thing is how we use the analysis for action, and we need to be very action-oriented. And so the timeline was set very tightly early February, and want to make sure that we can share something with you and use it for our joint action moving forward. And clearly there are some critical issues and gaps, identified we need to fix for change. And I look at everything we do in terms of strategic planning for impact. This is a major gap in WHO, but also in the global communities. We have some specific strategic planning under some disease-specific type, but if you look at the overall implementation of the roadmap, and within WHO, we don't have that function fully, filled. And this is really creating a lot of problems. As I was saying, without strategic plan, without implementation plan, it's very difficult to have a strong M&E. And we have also missed opportunity in terms of strategy engagement, both within WHO and outside WHO, because as I said earlier, we have so many global platforms. Discussion on global health agenda and architecture where we don't see entities represented. We talked about the universal coverage, the climate change, One Health, and so many other, pandemic preparedness and response. And we have an important role to play there, and we need to claim it and occupy the space we need to occupy. The issue of national coordination platform for me also is a major gap we are seeing to, that really make it challenging to have real country leadership and ownership for well-coordinated planning process, implementation, joint M&E, including the supply chain management, because everything affecting real coordination, joint engagement, and M&E is affecting the supply chain management, and we'll come back to that. And for me also, research and development, I saw it as a critical gap. We have seen progress on DTAG and others, but if compared to others like health emergency and epidemics, in 2016, 2017, we were obliged to set up the R&D blueprint for outbreaks that really facilitated the acceleration of the vaccines for Ebola and other tools for Lassa fever, Cayman Congo, and so on. But if you look at NTDs, you don't have this coordinated end-to-end process from research, development, production, supply, who's going to supply the medicine, and how we are going to make it available for people to use it. And this needs to be built as a strong pillar for NTDs, because we have a lot to do, in terms of new tools, new medicines, new vaccines. I was surprised to see after more than 25 years back to NTDs that we are still using for some diseases the same medicine, and we don't have new medicines. This needs really to change. Global coordination platform is another issue we need to address. Of course, we have small coordination mechanism. We have a number of networks, a number of working groups, but these networks and working groups are not talking to each other, and we don't know what is happening. How are we prioritizing? How are we working together to have one plan that reflects our priorities for the year and how we are going to allocate resources? This is critical. We have had similar challenges in malaria that oblige us to set up what we call at the time the harmonization working group, with clear work streams. You have the advocacy, this mobilization with 2 co-chair. You have the supply, work stream. You have strategic planning and performance management work stream I was chairing. You have so many other work streams, but coming together, in one platform to work together to prioritize and be very accountable on the way we are implementing those priorities. This is missing right now. And so in terms of evidence-based strategic planning, as I was saying, this is really, an important gap we will need to fill. And first in WHO by setting up clear team working on strategic planning linked to the M&E across the diseases. And I'll come back to that in more detail. And we need to work on the global action plan to also accelerate the implementation of the roadmap linked to the costing. The costing team is working right now, but it's clear to have an estimate of what we need for 24, 25. At the same time, have a proper review of, a midterm of the roadmap to be able to have a real acceleration for implementation and have a clear end-to-end process on our technical guidance, development, and others. And it's critically important to link our target for disease elimination and eradication with WHO emergency SOPs, because I'm talking about, real disease elimination and eradication where we need to stop transmission. When you reach certain level, every new case should be considered as an outbreak, and you need to use the emergency SOPs. We have those SOPs internally. We are using them for outbreaks, and we can release funds from the contingency fund for emergency to be able to rapidly investigate, to rapidly contain new cases, do contact tracing, and all the things you need to prevent, reintroduction. But we are not using it. I've already, met with my clients' emergency program to make sure that we are going to use the emergency SOPs in a more effective way. The strategic engagement I was talking about, we missed many opportunities to position NTDs within the global health architecture, because most of the time here, the NTD teams work in isolation in WHO, although there are some examples of collaboration, but they are not so proactive, and we need to work differently. And so all the discussion on global health architecture, we need to make sure that NTDs are there and well positioned. It's not, something we are begging for. It's a win-win situation because we contribute to, primary health care, universal health coverage, pandemic preparedness and response. And we want to make sure that when we allocate the roles and resources, NTDs are really taken into account and they can be used, as I said, as main pressure for universal health coverage. And we need to make sure that we continue in our messaging and high-level engagement for WHO. That's why for me, it was important to have the DG again after having him for our skilled entities meeting to really, continue putting pressure for real investment in-house, but also outside WHO. And so the country-level engagement and advocacy for me is so critical. I was really surprised to see that in donor countries, you have very strong NTD networks with people who are so committed. But if you go to endemic countries, very difficult to find similar, commitment and even level of awareness. Most of the decision makers, politicians in endemic countries, they don't know what is happening in NTDs. And NTDs are kind of marginalized and they don't have any budget line or any way to really take into account NTDs in their programming. And this needs to change. But to do that, we really need to look at how we are working together with countries. It's extremely important for me. And when we engage with funding mechanisms, we need to take into account, we need two-pronged approach. We need to talk to donor countries because they are representing in the board and they are making decisions. But at the same time, we need to make sure that the demand exists in affected countries. When they work on the proposal for global fund or pandemic fund, to take into account, very important cost-cutting issues like, the data system, where we can integrate the supply system, but also the health workforce and capacity we need both in the health facilities and at a community level. We need, critical rethinking of our M&E. It's very fragmented right now. And as I was saying, we are asking them to do a lot, but it's not yet, cohesive and coherent. And we need to change it to make sure that all these specific programs contribute to M&E and vice versa. But also we leverage existing, data systems. I know in some countries they're already, reporting jointly on malaria and NTDs. I believe in Senegal, they are doing it, and other countries. But even if you look at within WHO, we have a division working only on data, DDI, with strong capacity. But we are starting to work with them for better integration of NTD data into existing platforms to make sure that everybody can have access in a very transparent manner to data that are credible, that can allow us to know where we are for every disease, but also to monitor impact. But for some of the diseases like schisto, like yours, who can tell me where we are right now? Nobody. So when I asked first question on schisto, because I have worked on schisto before, where we are, and the team told me we are still using data that are 15 years old. This is not acceptable, and we have to change it. It will determine how we are also targeting our intervention, because you cannot just continue doing mass treatment everywhere without knowing what you are treating. So, and we have opportunities for some giant surveillance also, like zero surveillance, and we are missing opportunity for integration even within NTDs. Making sure that we really rebuild the NTD, but we invest into that. When we are investing into this specific, make sure that the component of data and M&E is strong enough. And to also launch the M&E working group to make sure that they contribute in an optimal way, and working with all expertise we have in the community. And country ownership, again, we need to work together to build capacity for country leadership and ownership, because if you don't have the right leadership in countries, it's very difficult. Yesterday, I was just asking the team, when we talk about capacity building, with the number of costs we have now in WHO platform, do you have anything on country leadership? The answer was no, clearly. But looking again, upon WHO, we started upon WHO from the health emergency side. One of the main costs I was reading was on health emergency leadership, to make sure that we have a cohort of, health emergency leader. We train and coach to really, guide everything happening and coordinate at country level. We need the same for, NTDs, to make sure that our NTDs program manager are strong enough, their teams are strong enough, and they're part of, the planning process, decision-making at country level, using existing national platform. And we need to make sure that also national coordination platform exists. They can be jointly done with malaria, they can be done only for NTDs, depending on the context, but we need to have something. When we start to roll back malaria, we started with building national coordination platform before starting planning. The first mission we undertook at that time is to go to every country, have multi-sectoral national coordination platform. After that, we started doing the situation analysis and strategy planning. But we need to look at where we are in countries and to make sure that we have strong national coordination platform. And we all engage together in a transparent manner and using key performance indicators that will be available for everybody, including for the supply chain performance indicators. This cannot be disconnected from the M&E and national coordination. And so we need to support also enemy countries to have strong network to build awareness and make sure that, at the highest level, they will be part of the decision-making process. Supply chain, I know we will be having a meeting on Wednesday. In April, we also have a joint meeting with WHO and NTD Pharma. And clearly, we still have, very important issues we need to address. I was surprised to see the lack of accountability for, the donation program, where countries are free to, report or not to report, while at the same time they are reporting timely to Global Fund or other mechanism. So why should they consider that the donation program are just for free? You don't have to be accountable. We need to change that mindset with actions, using real tools to make sure that at country level, we have the right tools and system, but not disconnected from, national coordination platform to be able to not only report, but to work in a more, evidence-based approach. You cannot just do forecasting by thinking about the number of medicine you need. You need real data on the disease prevalence. Who do you need to treat? But also to take into account the implementation costs for the donation program. Can you imagine sending vaccines to countries without any implementation costs? We know exactly what is unit cost for vaccines. We know unit cost for distributing long-lasting nets. Why do we do the same, having a more comprehensive way of planning, ruling out, the donation program? This needs to be critically fixed, to not continue to blame each other. This is a critical gap we need to fix for our credibility and sustainability of our work. Research and development, as I said, is a critical gap, and you need to set up it together, have an R&D blueprint to make sure that we have a clear end-to-end process from research and development, production, supply, and distribution. I'm not going into details. You will have the slide for that. And as I was saying, you have really to make sure that we prioritize new diagnosis. We have it already, but therapeutics and vaccine. We all know there are products that are, being developed right now, but we need to be more proactive, anticipate on, the production, supply, but also in terms use the evidence to update our policy and guidance. You cannot wait until everything is done to start working on guidance. That it will take years to be able to update any guidance. You have seen during COVID-19 that we had, what we call living guidance. We will update when new evidence happens. We need to be more flexible, adaptable, and proactive, action-oriented. We cannot continue to be too much process-oriented. For me, coordination also and leadership for this partnership is really critical. And I was saying earlier that we are not really having a global coordination mechanism where everybody, all pillars and stakeholders can be represented to make sure that we agree on the priorities and our plan for the year and how we are going to mobilize and allocate resources. And that's why, for me, this cross-cutting function on strategic planning and engagement with WHO will be set up. But at partner level, we need a kind of harmonization working group where all technical working group will be represented, but we'll have clear work stream, work plan, and harmonized objective to work together. And this will make sure that we are all transparent and accountable. For me, this is really missing and we need to fix it. And working together, we will explore new partnership, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure that entities are well represented. But we need also stronger alignment between, WHO headquarters, regional offices, and country offices. Sometimes we have very excellent initiative and flagship in the regional office, but there is a disconnect between the headquarters and the regional offices. And I want to work strongly with all our colleagues to fill this gap because we need one WHO. We are not going to have the same thing in every regional office because the contexts are different, but we need to make sure that at global level, we are aligned and we have the right function and capacity to work with them to support countries, working with partners. And again, using national platform to implement our partnership objectives. And in terms of culture and human resources enablers in WHO, this is so critical. And we need to create a transparent, supportive, and dependable team culture. This is missing in WHO entities. This is, a very fragmented program, and people are happy to have results in the, closer network and cycle, but ignoring even what is happening next door. They don't know what the other colleagues are doing. And this is not the way we should work. When we talk about global NTD program, it should start with us. We need to be more coherent horizontally within WHO, but also vertically, as I said, with the other level of the organization. This why we need to change the way we are reporting and working together to make sure that we are more cross-cutting and more strategic in terms of function. And it's very important also for me to prioritize staffing in high burden countries. We cannot accept that in many countries, if you look at the national professional officer in WHO, you will have somebody in charge of HIV, TB, or malaria, and when they have time, they deal with NTD. No, it's not acceptable. We need to be serious about it as WHO and to make sure that we have the right, profile and capacity to implement the roadmap. We need also to prioritize flexible funding in WHO and to make sure that the capacity we need in the regions are there. If I look at, for example, the African region, if we, you have expand with specific funding, but if you look at the other NTDs, are we really prioritizing our flexible funding to make sure that we have the right leadership and capacity to support countries? This is not there. And, but it's also important to make sure that we have a very clear, transparent career progression in NTDs here. This is very unpredictable. You can see people, carrying out short-term function for more than 10 years. How can it be short-term? They are getting contracts for 3 months, 6 months. Very, you will be very insecure while they're asking you to be so performant. This is just unacceptable and unfair, and we need to fix it. I have seen it many times in WHO. I work hard to fix it in health emergency. But anytime you move to another area, you see the same problem. And this is not acceptable. This is not fair. And you shouldn't accept it as WHO. And as manager in NTDs, colleagues shouldn't accept it. They need to fight for their stuff. And for me, this culture needs to change. You shouldn't be comfortable as a manager just because you have everything you need as an individual, but your team members are suffering because they don't have the right contract. They don't have any stability. Every 3 months, you have to go through an admin process, even for your card legitimation in Switzerland. This is just unfair and unacceptable, and we need to look at it seriously. Another thing is about the succession plan, for young professionals. Moving from health emergency to NTD. In health emergency, you have so many young professionals, very motivated. I know there are many motivated young NTDs also professionals all over the world because I'm getting messages every day, directly or from LinkedIn and so on. We need to make sure that they have an opportunity to join us. Otherwise, I'm sorry to say the team is very old here in WHO, and we need to change it. We need fresh blood, and a new way of thinking and new initiative to strengthen everything we are doing. And we will start internally by doing some kind of loan agreement with health emergency with some young professionals, but we need to think for the longer term and make sure that we do it together. And so in terms of next step, for me, the first immediate step is, to set up a transition team. I'm going to lead on strategic planning and connect it to the M&E because we need to start working on it, strategic planning and strategic engagement to start filling the gaps we have right now, and next. This is very important to start it right now. Make sure that in the director's office, we elevate the M&E to be a cross-cutting function, not like just a program like the disease control elimination program, but have it as a cross-cutting function and start critically thinking about our strategic planning, how we are going to work with partners on global implementation plan for NTDs, but also have more direct interaction with these specific focal points and leads. Because the way we are organized right now, if you take ONCO, SHISTO, they are far below the organogram. I'm not even the second level supervisor. So there is no direct interaction, and this needs to change. You don't need this level of hierarchy. It doesn't make any sense. We need to be more efficient. And we need to make sure also that we prioritize some flagship programs on disease elimination, eradication. Some initiatives like the Global Arbovirus Initiative, this was already launched with health emergency, but we need to be more proactive and take it as also an entry point for the pandemic preparedness and response. The work on the health campaign effectiveness and integration is extremely important. We need to make sure also it's prioritized and we continue working with partners. And the skin entity, entry point as our platform for integration with primary healthcare for me is really critical. And so this is the same thing almost. I will not spend too much time here. And so I'm looking ahead for the next 6 months in terms of strategic priorities. Clearly, advocacy and visibility will continue to be a priority internally and externally, and we all need to do it together in a coherent manner. But we need to move from advocacy for advocacy, being happy just because NTD is mentioned in a declaration, to advocacy into actions. We need to have clear, measurement of what we are advocating for and what action are being taken from our advocacy, and continue building a strong partnership, as I said, with kind of harmonization working group where we'll have share and co-share with clear work streams or pillars, with co-shares also, people contributing to the pillar and have a clear plan and accountability mechanism. The costing is a priority we'll continue to work on, linked to the global action plan. Expanding donor communities and sustainable funding and implementing flagship program is important. Our joint investment into WHO leadership to be able to implement the functional review, outcome is extremely important, but also we'll continue to prioritize everything we do in terms of technical work on M&E, supply and R&D, because this is the reason why WHO exists, and we want to make sure that everything we do is done partnership in a very transparent, open manner, because we have so much to do that we don't need to fight for, a role. We need to be clear. Everybody should contribute, but we can do it in a very organized and transparent manner. And together, clearly, we will be stronger, and we need to keep it in mind, continue working together and to build a stronger and more transparent and predictable partnership, as I said already, to make sure that we together, with all the power and energy we have, is our partner, we reposition NTDs in this global health architecture, and we push to have NTDs as a tracer for universal health coverage. For me, this is something we all should push together with our, countries' representative in all the high-level discussion. We don't want the high-level, panel on universal health coverage just to mention NTDs, and we are happy. We want strong commitment toward NTDs. And we need to make sure that we all work together to accelerate implementation for disease elimination, eradication. Otherwise, we will continue for the next 10 years. We'll say, oh, we only have 5 cases of Guinea worm. This is fine, but I don't want that. We need now to accelerate. I don't want us also to come in the next 10 years to say we are still trying to get zero leprosy. We need active acceleration of the elimination eradication program. Thank you. So, finally, I'm supposed to share this session still. But we'll open for maybe, Camila, you can share maybe just the questions and contributions, and making sure that we can take some of the points I highlighted in our upcoming discussion in also the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. So, the floor is now open for any comments or questions on the presentation we've just heard. And Farah, if you can tell us if there are any questions on Slido. Is anyone going to make a comment, or do we have to pick on people? Jordan? If you can say where you're from to start.
So Jordan Tapro, I'm Deputy Director with the NTD team at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There were 3 technical themes at the end of your presentation, M&E, supply chain, R&D. Could you give us a little more insight? I know there's been quite a bit of work about supply chain and a lot of supply chain meetings that will happen on Wednesday, but what is the thinking process for moving forward on those themes for research development and for monitoring and evaluation. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jordan. It's always nice to meet friends again. We have been heavily involved in health emergencies together when he was CDC. And I'm sure we can use many of the things I've been doing from health emergencies to accelerate into the implementation. So on the supply chain system, as I was saying, I was first of all surprised to see that we were only having the first joint meeting between WHO and pharma in last April, after so many years of donation. So, and when I was listening from both sides, everybody was complaining, but nobody wanted to be accountable. And for me, this is not the way to build some partnership. That's why during the meeting with pharma, I told them we are very open and we want open discussion and transparency for actions, because we need joint accountability in this mechanism. The way it's working right now is not acceptable, because the way we are doing, prediction is not correct. The way we are forecasting the needs is not correct, because the data is not the right data for some of the diseases. How can we do proper forecasting without proper data? The first, for me, is the first problem. So other problems, when you do forecasting for an operation, you need to take into account the operational costs. This is not happening. People will do forecasting for the medicine. When the medicine arrives in the country, they start thinking about who's going to pay for the implementation. This is not correct. The reporting system is not there because we are missing tools, system and integration. And we need in the upcoming meeting to sit together to look at concretely how we are going to work together with countries, both WHO and partners, to make sure that we have strong and integrated system for supply chain. So we avoid expiration of drug in a very unexpected manner because we don't do properly the forecasting. We need also to look at the process with all the existing tools that we show for the demand and supply to make sure that it's more predictable, is more reliable, and we can rely on it for donation. And this is important also for the company donating the medicine to be able to use proper data to make sure that we are making progress. We are not only going to treat the same people forever, but we use evidence to adapt our intervention and link it to the sustainability we need in countries. And for the M&E, as I was saying, is still very fragmented. For some of the diseases, you have data. For the disease, you don't have data. For some of the network, you have strong M&E system, but for other diseases, for the same country, you don't have any good M&E system. We need to make sure that we have a coordinated way of prioritizing, having global action plan, implementation plan for the NTD, where we can redefine the roles in M&E, looking at the tools also to see what need to be continued and what need to be changed, and how we are going to have the right mechanism with all partners working in the sector. We are not there right now, and we need to really build it. The team is working hard to try to, do everything they can, but they don't have the means in terms of human resources, in terms of tools, but in terms of collaboration also from the disease-specific program. And this needs to change. Thanks.
Thanks, Jordan. Kashif, you've got your card up, and then we'll go to Yao. Thanks. And then online.
Thank you very much. Kashif Ijaz, the Vice President for Health at the Carter Center. First of all, I applaud you and your team for undertaking this departmental review. I think it's a very important effort as you move forward. I have a comment and a question. So the comment is actually related to, and I might have missed it in the earlier presentation that Gabriele was doing, in terms of the cross-cutting programmatic collaboration. One thing that I wanted to mention about was the NTD and the mental health programs working in a cross-cutting way, because specifically when you're dealing with the morbidity management and disability prevention related to lymphatic filariasis, that's actually something that we have actually done some work on. So just wanted to point that out when you're looking at other programs in a cross-cutting way. The other thing is basically my question, which I know you and I have actually discussed before, is when you talk about the health emergencies and its collaboration with the NTDs, and I want to specifically point out, for instance, the issue right now that we're actually having with cross-border guinea worm transmission, and additional cases between, the border on the other side of the Cameroon and Chad, and some of the cases which have spilled over into CAR. Can you comment on how you envision the Health Emergencies Program actually helping with that effort, and then how can we, or other NGOs which might be working in different places, coordinate that effort working with the Health Emergencies Program? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kashyap. You're absolutely right. Cross-cutting issues with mental health, but also NCDs in general, because if you look at all the complications in terms of disability from leprosy and other diseases, we need to make sure that when we treat the NTDs, we don't stop there because the disease is treated, but we, have a clear pathway for the primary healthcare system to take care of disabilities and others. And it was a great opportunity for me after the Skilled Entities meeting to make a presentation with all other directors working on NCDs and other communicable diseases to start real collaboration on, putting the link between NTDs and other programs we have here in WHO. People have been working, mainly on guidelines, and it's over. You put your guideline and you go. But we need to go beyond joint guideline development to make sure that we have real programmatic implementation, And on health emergencies, the cross-border collaboration is so crucial. And tomorrow we are going to have our health emergency people who will be mentioning some of the crosswork we need to do. But if you look at it really, and you go back to the international health regulation, there is one specific capacity we call, point of entry control and cross-border collaboration. And we were able to use this, function during big outbreaks like Ebola and others to make sure that when we respond, for example, to Ebola in Congo, we work with 6 neighboring countries. So as part of the response plan, there was a component on preparedness and readiness also funded. And this is really a best practice we have been using for health emergencies. Even before that, when I was WR in Mali, because of Ebola in Guinea, we were able to really build capacity for IOM to start doing, cross-border monitoring for disease surveillance and preparedness, and they are still working with WHO on that. So for Guinea worm, as I was saying, when you target eradication, every new case should be considered as an outbreak, meaning that, you don't only consider the border where you have it, but you consider neighboring countries where you work with communities, community health workers, health professional workers to have a kind of preparedness and response plan. So you can do, active case finding, you can send team to do investigation, contact tracing and others. And we have flexible fund to be able to do that. You just think to put Guinea worm under the emergency SOPs. In 2019, I had to, call the polio team to put polio under the emergency SOPs, because despite the eradication program, they were not under the emergency SOPs. It made their life much more easier because they can travel the same day. If they want to send teams, they can get access to money the same day to be able to operate. But in health emergency also, we need to take into account the humanitarian dimension. We have so many partners, the health cluster, more than 900 international and national partners. But when they plan for humanitarian response plans, they don't take into account NTDs. And this needs to change. And so also a discussion I had with Mike Ryan to make sure that working with what we call the International Standing Agency Committee, when they plan for humanitarian response plans, they take into account the NTDs. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. Just to note that we have got some online questions, one of which is quite technical, and so will be answered by our technical team. But the other 2 will be answered after Yao has asked his question. So thanks, Yao, and then we'll go to Joseph and then Emily. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Suse, for your presentation. Throughout the day, we are hearing that NTDs are a tracer for universal health coverage, which actually I agree. You go to any single small village in my country, actually you stop on the road, You ask somebody, have you received a pill? Maybe you were measured by a dose poll, and have you received it? Yeah, I got it. And some of those are receiving only that intervention once a year, the whole year. It's the only health intervention they are receiving. Let's be proud of NTD. And I totally, see why you, during all your presentation, you say not acceptable many times, which means we can no longer do business as usual. Let's not go into fatality and say, oh, we cannot do it. I saw you talking about a global funding mechanism to support our interventions. That's something that we need to certainly go strongly towards. Why? We should make our intervention visible because it's actually the more equitable. And what I cannot accept is the opportunity that we have where the majority of the medicine are donated for free. They are donated. But to get the medicine into country, for instance, is a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Countries cannot accept the medicine. Sometimes they just impose new fees. You send the medicine there, they got stuck at the airport of country. That's not something we can continue accepting. And how to look into some regional mechanisms so that those, emerging taxes, because the cost of the medicine is huge, a lot of income for the treasury. I think, please, let's get together and solve those issues which are very challenging for the medicine donors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yao. I've known Dr. Yao for many, many years when you were still very young, running more quickly than now. And working hardly on the ground to make things happening for NTDs, malaria, and others. And, when I say, unacceptable, I really mean it because, moving just from next door health emergency, seeing, everything I've been doing in a very isolated manner, not taking into account the NTDs and others. For me, this is not just acceptable. I don't want to contribute to that anymore. I want to make sure that, we really think about the people. And you have seen during the pandemic that even you cannot deal with communicable disease today, and tomorrow you come to deal with non-communicable disease. It doesn't make any sense. I know, even you are doing a lot in EMRO to make sure that this integration happens. That's why for me it's important for us to support initiative happening, at regional level. And those opportunities, we're amazing. The same people investing in very few diseases and wanting to have universal health coverage. We need to continue resonating this message at the highest level because it's just not acceptable. Thank you.
Thanks. So I wonder if you want to take the first question that we had online about from Maria at Sweden. Thanks.
Okay. Sweden. Yes. Thank you, Maria Teresa. On the interaction with TDR, HRP, and other alliances, this is extremely important health system research. When I was describing what we need to do in terms of research development, you can see that we need a number of pillars for R&D, and there are already existing work from the TDR and other partners, from DNDI, from GHIT, and we need to make sure that all these partners come together to have a more coordinated manner to think about R&D end-to-end, because our objective at the end is to make sure that the new product can reach the people who need them, and we have the right process to anticipate production, supply, who's going to pay, and how we're going to distribute the message. So we will bring a strong alliance for this. And a leprosy question, I will give it to Vivek, certainly. Any plan to activate NTD RPRG? This is the review program in the African region. Yeah. I'm sure my colleague from Afro will want to respond to that, but it's very important. We talk about accountability, transparency. If you don't do program review, how can you be accountable and transparent? Everywhere I've been working, I use program review mechanisms. If you look at the malaria program, you have what we call, MPR, Malaria Program Performance Review, which is a requirement before strategy planning, but also for midterm. So when I moved to health emergencies, I use the same approach to propose the joint external evaluation of IHR, because WHO was only doing self-assessment. And we have the Global Health Security agenda with the US. They wanted to do different type of assessment. Jordan, you was there. So in our meeting in Cape Town, June 2015, we decided to have a joint process, joint external evaluation of IHR to be more credible before we can plan for health security. So for me, program review is extremely important, and we need to use them more regularly for NTDs.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to some more online questions in a minute, but in the meantime, can we go to Joseph Jenkinson? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Joe Jenkinson from the Permanent Mission of Canada. Firstly, thanks so much for this presentation. Jose, it's very informative. I particularly appreciated the slide on the enablers that you highlighted. I think this is an organizational strengthening component is often lost, and actually I think this is critical for this issue. I'm pleased and encouraged to see the action member states have taken recently on the sustainable financing agenda, including in the support for the program budget, which I think is showing a very large proportion of funds now going to the country level. And it's going to be critical to make sure that there's really strong measuring of impact for that shift. But also, I think in terms of sustaining that momentum on sustainable financing that member states have been working on recently, it'll be critical to see some of those continuing organizational reform works going on within WHO as a sort of as a way to really just build on the momentum and keep member states on track to pushing the further the vision on sustainable financing for the organization as a whole. So that I think is really important. And then very encouraged by the proposal on a functional review. I think that's I'd be really interested to hear a bit more, if possible, actually, about what that might involve and when we might expect some outcome or the outcome of that review process, how that would be communicated and by who. And then the emphasis you placed on coordination, leadership and partnership. Again, I think this is really, really critical. In fact, one of the things walking into this room this morning that was immediately apparent is the real multi-stakeholder response to this issue is clearly attracted. And that's an excellent strength, I think, that we have, that we need to make sure we're leveraging properly. But I think that will require clear leadership to try and bring all these pieces together. So it'd be interesting to hear again what the vision is, and what the goal is you have in mind in terms of leadership, and particularly the role that we can expect WHO to play in that area. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joseph. And clearly, everything we do in NTDs need to be linked to the global agenda and discussion. That's why the sustainable financing and the increase of flexible fund for WHO is actually important. But we need to go further to make sure that the internal allocation of resources also is fair. And this is why also we want, and we have the DG commitment to make sure that NTD is prioritized. I think it's extremely important. And so everything I'm presenting here in an action-oriented manner is from the functional review. Because as I was saying, it's not a summative evaluation, but more of the formative evaluation, where you take, the most, important issues and critical issues and gap for actions together. Because I was saying the functional review for WHO is an entry point, but it's not only for WHO, it's for all of us. And if you look at this diverse group, this is so rich that we cannot miss the opportunity to be better coordinated and working together for greater impact. And I've seen a question on, related to, and this really going to lead to change both internally in WHO, but also the way we are working with partners. So we are going to finalize the report, but it's important already to present, where we are heading to with the functional review, because we need to start moving together. And a question on the advocacy and visibility on TD for the 6 months. What will be the main focus areas? I think we have been talking about so many areas where we need to use the opportunities existing in global health, but also working with donor countries, but with affected countries. And we want to do it in a coordinated manner. I talk about this, harmonization working group where we'll have pillars. You have pillar in advocacy and digital mobilization with clear work plan and objectives and what will happen after the advocacy. This is a way we can do real advocacy. You cannot just advocate, for the sake of being happy because you have pictures, on Twitter. We need to be actually also result-oriented in advocacy and digital mobilization. I'm sure Ellen, you will be happy to comment on that. And the same for other areas. We need clear plan and consistency in the way we are implementing the plan and achieving results in all areas. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I know that we've got Kirsten online who wants to make a comment, and then we'll go to Emily. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Dr. Tedros, Professor Salomon, and Dr. Fall. I hope you hear me. And I would like to congratulate Dr. Fall for a great presentation, very honest and very clear. It is important to talk about neglected diseases in general, but to understand the problem, we also need to focus on specific diseases, and I want to focus on leprosy, the disease that is curable, and the facts about 130,000 people according to available data. But what do we know? Is that the real number? In Africa, Southeast Asia, Brazil, India, Indonesia, we have cases of leprosy still. And even in US, they have about 100 cases diagnosed per year, but there is not a problem because they have functioning health system and they can address this disease appropriately. Leprosy is disease of poor, a neglected disease affecting most neglected populations with limited or in some cases no access to health services. And this is particularly so when combined with conflicts, some lasting for decades. I want to focus on such population in Nuba Mountains and Blue Nile. These are Nuba people where population has no access to health services and leprosy is spreading. Combined with drought and WHO not being able to address situation appropriately because of conflict, people there are really left behind. WHO Secretariat is doing a great job, but as has been said, they cannot do it alone. What could be done in such cases and how could us member states assist? This is an issue. Member states should strive to succeed with SDGs, of course, but we cannot do so if we don't pay attention to these kind of issues. We need to support better the Secretariat. We need to work together, invest, and I really seriously think that without our support, WHO will not be able to deal with such situations appropriately. We should better also understand why neglected diseases in some populations are actually neglected. And to start with what we could do, we could better work with partners on the ground. And in most cases, these are NGOs. These are often the only entities that are present in such cases. So here, my question would be, because I consider this as an emergency, actually, this is in that case, a permanent emergency. How could we better combine what is done by those WHO parts that deal with emergencies and those that are dealing with neglected diseases? Because if we want to address this, and if we are speaking constantly of nobody left behind, we will have to combine our forces. I also see here an opportunity that when countries are about developing aid, we should also consider neglected diseases as a matter of developing aid, because as has been said, acting there, it's also strengthening health systems and making sure that there are health services. we should not only strive for easy gains, and I'm concluding here, but also focus together on the most toughest one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kristin, I believe from Slovenia, for this very strong advocacy. And my first travel when I was appointed, it was to the Vatican for leprosy meeting. I can tell you I was so sad because I was hearing the same issues that I was facing when I was directly working on leprosy in the field. After more than 25 years, I said, this is not normal to still have the same challenges we were having already at that time when we are targeting zero leprosy. So meaning that we need to work differently if you want to achieve zero leprosy and just take it as an emergency. And I also had many meetings with your minister on the situation in the Nuba Mountain and Blue Nile, where you have people are very isolated with leprosy, but also so many other NTDs. And I deployed Farah. Farah, you can raise your hand. I deployed Farah to Sudan for a joint mission with the health emergency program, because for me, this is the kind of humanitarian crisis, localized humanitarian situation where we need to use all our assets, to address the health issues using leprosy and anti-point. Unfortunately, you know what happened in Sudan, and we were obliged to quickly evacuate her to get out of the place before the bombing started in the country. But we are still looking for any opportunity to continue this work. And the issue you raised also in other regions are so critical. And I believe that we will be able to address them by making sure that we work more closely with our regional offices and partners. There's a question on climate change, and environment for WHO. So what I realize is most of the talk on climate change here in WHO and outside is focusing on air pollution, building climate-friendly health facilities. Nobody is really talking about the health impact of climate change for NTDs, for vector-borne disease, and how we're going to do to prevent and to respond to those situations. That's why, for me, using the arbovirus initiative as flagship is important. As WHO, our main role is not to build health facilities for climate friendly. We can advise on what to do, but our main work is really to make sure that we work to prevent the consequences, the health consequences, but also to respond to new health threats, related to climate change. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. I think our next question from the floor is from Emily Wainwright. We're a bit aware that also this session will, we need to move on to the costing session in about 15 minutes, but we'll try and get through everyone's questions and comments before then. Thanks.
Thank you. And Dr. Val, thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. There was clearly a lot of information in the slides. One of the the overarching theme that I think came through quite clearly is you were highlighting on the need for focusing on things like, really strategic planning, the need to take a look at, how M&E is structured, and a a restructuring and relabeling of the global program. And I think that really speaks to the need. We have a new roadmap. It's been an exciting opportunity, but I think the operationalizing of it has really been the piece that we haven't been able to, move forward on. And I think that's what you're trying to get at when I look at these slides, and when I'm thinking particularly about the strategic planning, the M&E, and the restructuring. I guess one of the things that would be interesting to hear is, what do you see for yourself in the next 6 months as the priority actions that, because there's a lot in those slides, and I appreciate that one, we're getting into a multi-year plan, but just really interested in those particular areas, given the importance of them. What are you seeing as the priority actions or agenda that you have in place for the next 6 months? Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for the partnership, the very frank and open partnership. We have had meeting in DC, but also very regular interactions. Yeah, I presented the priorities for the next 6 months in broad terms, by area, but we will be very focused on concretely what we need to achieve. And for me, this meeting is a starting point for the next 6 months. And everything we will get from this meeting also will be taken into account. And when I talk about the advocacy, advocacy into actions, this is an area also where we will continue working together, targeting, as I said, the existing platforms you have at global level, but also existing funding mechanism, as we are doing already, talking to donor countries, but also talking to recipient countries on how they can make sure that the demand is created at country level, but also more awareness from the decision makers, and we'll make it more specific in the action plan. In terms of partnership, for me, two main thing we need to work on. I talked about the global coordination platform we need to have to make sure that everything is very predictable. We are planning, clear objective and accountability. But the other component will be also working with countries to really strengthen the national coordination mechanism. The work on the costing is another priority. They will present in the coming session where they are and to make sure that they continue working together with partners to have, kind of global action plan where we can have a more longer term costing will be important. And so the work on WHO leadership and the critical functions in terms of strategic planning, working with partners, looking at the M&E work, the tools, the systems, and how we can improve the work of the working group will be another priority, and so on. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. We'll go next to Ellen. Thanks, Ellen.
First, I just wanted to thank you so much, Sose, for all the time that you've taken in reviewing so much input. Just from the end fund, you were able to spend a day with us in New York and meet with staff and technical team and board members and our donors. It meant a lot. We really felt great collaboration and conversation there. I wanted to ask, in the slide that you had about 6-month priorities, there was about expanding donor base and sustainable financing. And under there, a bullet point on pilot flagship programs. And I was just curious what you had in mind for that and what ways that the community can support you. Also, it's been discussed in a number of places these days, how can we access NTD funding from Gavi and the Global Fund? And I always get worried about that, in that my visibility has been that there's been advocacy over the past decade with NTDs and those entities that has not been successful. I think there's a little bit of a shift, but also I know that there's so many other diseases that are hoping to get funding from those mechanisms, and that even the diseases that they do focus on, they don't have enough resources. So I'm just curious, what do you think is the environment currently, the opportunity, and how to kind of just temper expectations, perhaps? Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. We spent a whole day or 1 day or half. They kept me hostage, asking me questions for a whole day in the office. But it was very interesting to see all the teams, all your teams, and knowing what they are doing, but also some of the philanthropists really, committed and helping to fund NTDs. And so we have so much to do in NTDs, as you know. That's why it's important to have some flagship where we can be more focused on, be able to mobilize more specific funding, but also, taking into account the cross-cutting issues we need to address, like the M&E and others. And so by having this flagship, we will have more attention in WHO because they are cross-cutting flagship. If you take the arboviruses initiative, it was launched, in last year, but in terms of concrete action and real investment in-house, what has happened? is still very limited, and we need to make it happen, make it a reality, have it as a broader partnership. If you take others I mentioned on the disease elimination, eradication, this is really a call to accelerate, the way we are working into this specific, diseases internally and outside with our partners. Some of the other cross-cutting issues like the skin entities and primary health care, where we already have so very strong commitment from, not only the NTD community, but also the dermatologists and so many other associations. And lastly, on the health campaign effectiveness also, where we have partnership in-house, but also so many other partners like colleague from the Global Task Force working on it with other partners. We need to make sure that these are cross-cutting avenues we can use to accelerate our implementation and help also your work in terms of have more concrete, entry point for this mobilization, where we can show exactly what we are going to achieve in addition to the roadmap. In terms of advocacy, Gavi and Global Fund, I think if I look at carefully, in the past, there were a lot of focus on discussing directly with the Global Fund and Gavi. Of course, they are always, reluctant because it's just more work for them. But what we are doing right now, them advocates, we talk with the donor countries and recipient countries to create the demand. And I was really happy to see in many donor countries, they really see the need to move from only 3 diseases to more universal health coverage, putting more funding into some system issues that are cross-cutting for NTDs, malaria, and others. And I think we have a real opportunity to change it because I'm not going to create a global fund for NTDs. So we need to make sure that we continue, all of us, to really push to have a more, comprehensive way of dealing with health, because they cannot only invest for a few diseases. If we think about the people really that are suffering from all this.
Thanks very much. I'm really aware that we have a lot of people who want to ask SOSE questions. We have very little time left. So I'm going to give my permission to grab him at lunchtime if you don't get your question answered. Sorry, SOSE.
No, it's fine.
Paul Emerson, I think, was going to ask the next question. And if we can,
Yeah, thank you very much. Paul Emerson, Task Force for Global Health. Thank you so much for doing this, SOSE. You made a very fast presentation with a lot of information in it. And you did a very, very good job at putting together the what are the problems after 10 years of successful collaboration. I'd like to ask now about the how, because that's the next. You've got this global momentum in this room. There's so many strong partners, very strong funding partners, implementing partners, advocacy partners. So the question is, in your strategic planning team and your next steps, talk about the how and how can we support you? How can we as the global community support you in the next steps?
Thank you very much, Paul. And the how is extremely important. If you really look at the global community in terms of technical work, almost everybody knows what we need to do. But we need to make sure that we have a coordinated partnership because we have so many strong pillars and so many people working on it. But most of the time, you don't have the interconnection. They don't know, what the other group is doing. So in the how, for me, by creating a type of harmonization working group for global coordination, where if you take one pillar, let's say, health campaign effectiveness, you have share and co-share, and we agree on what we are going to do and how we are going to do it with clear performance indicator. If you take another pillar on advocacy and this is mobilization, we have share and co-share. And you take the M&E, the supply system, and together we can have strong plan, including, a part of the how is the global implementation plan of the roadmap, where you can have very strong pillar, but also regional focus on the how. When we were doing, for example, the global action plan for malaria, the GMAP, Global Malaria Action Plan 28, we had focal person in every region for the regional strategy. I was leading the regional strategy for Africa, taking into account the specificity and how we are going to work with countries. And this is something we need to build together. And we need to do it in a very open manner. We shouldn't see it as WHO doing something, but as something we call on and we are all accountable to. This is really the shift I want to happen in the global program, not people sitting in the department of WHO being very defensive about everything. No, we need to be open. We need to work together to make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. And in the spirit of transparency, we're going to steal 5 minutes from the costing presentation. They've agreed, apparently. Just to try and get through the next few comments. Ada, do you want to make a comment? And then we've got Louis, Grija, Diogo, Vivek, Simon and Caroline. Hopefully we can get through everybody, but we may not. Thank you for your patience.
I wasn't sure if I was going to make it into the queue. Thank you for highlighting so honestly some of the challenges that you've observed and faced. I guess 2 questions in relation to country ownership. My colleague over here, Mr. Yao, mentioned the challenges with customs and duties and how that causes increased costs that's unplanned in importing. I also wonder if that is somewhat correlated to the dependency that's been created essentially on customs and importing, as using it as sort of a regulatory body, and what we can do to essentially move towards or over the hump of regulatory agency harmonization across the region. What started as solutions that were supposed to be sort of temporary, using import permits that are dependent on stringent regulatory authorities when there's lack of registration, has sort of become this new model of how one imports medicines. And often, if one detail is off on an import permit application, it holds up the delivery of medicines and just stocks them there. I'm wondering what we can all, not just you, Dr. Sosa, but what can all of us in the room collectively do to push the regions over the hump to get to regulatory harmonization. We often hear how close we come, and it just hasn't happened. And then that seems like a very important need for us to get to country ownership. The other question I have is, as we hear over the next 2 days about barriers and the need towards sustainability, I'm wondering if in the future we can plan for more examples around positive solutions that have been implemented at the country level and creating stronger country-to-country mentorship. We know necessity is necessity drives innovation, and I think there may be some really good solutions there as we move towards the roadmap to being able to highlight some great country interventions that may be applicable to the others in the future. So I'm hoping we can implement those.
Thank you, Aida. And you raise very important issues we discussed in the April meeting in terms of making sure that we have the right regulatory process and import process for drug donation and others. And country ownership in general, I think this need for many of us to change the way we are working with countries, not only seeing our single entry point and vertical program, but making sure that together we build real country leadership and capacity. You talk about country mentorship. I think this is exactly what we need to make sure that they can decide on their priorities, on how they are going to work with partners. It's extremely important to make sure that this will happen. We need all to agree to have a joint engagement, around and national coordination, national planning, joint M&E, joint resource mobilization, and so on. And that's why I was saying in terms of capacity building, we need to go beyond technical capacity building and to look at really issues like leadership and capacity for NTD's program managers to really lead, partners, but also coordinate actions at country levels. This is extremely important.
Thank you. I think I'm afraid the final comment question will be Luis from PAHO. I'm really sorry to everyone else. I think it's a tribute to this session that people really want to speak, and we're very sorry for the time constraints. Hopefully, we can continue this conversation throughout the next 2 days. Luis, thank you.
Thank you. And so, Dr. Sose, I'd like to, on behalf of the Pan American Health Organization, thank you for taking the time, you and your team, to very carefully reflect, update, and analyze such a comprehensive proposal we're putting together. You mentioned in one of your slides that together we perform better. And as a regional office, I like to commit ourselves to strongly be considered in your plan. I think we bring a lot of added value to this to make more detailed translation of country needs adjustments to global plans. And I can tell you by experience, countries are extremely prepared to take on any challenge if challenges are properly presented. So I just wanted to emphasize that this comes in a very much needed time. And as a regional office, I think we can contribute significantly to make of this a very successful plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis, Pajo, and all the regional offices. I'm really impressed, any time to see the work done at regional level, but at the same time, I'm not surprised. I spent most of my time working in WHO, working in the regional office. And without strong regional office, you cannot really achieve sustainable result into all this disease control program. And I'm very reassured by your commitment to work together as one team. This is really what we need. There is no way headquarters can replace the regional office and vice versa. And making sure that we all work together to support countries and to work with them on the challenges is really what we need to do together. And as I said, to my colleagues here in headquarters, there are many things we need to learn from the regional offices, because they are very close to country, they are very action-oriented and problem-solving. This is exactly what we need, to take into account what they are doing and to add value to what they are doing, not to try to, duplicate or to parachute anything else. So making sure that we have this alignment across the organization is extremely important. And I would like also to use this opportunity before we move to another section to, of course, pay tribute to Dr. Mwele, who have been with you for, I believe, almost 4 or 5 years working on NTDs, but also making sure that you work together to develop the new roadmap we are, talking about today. And she's very well missed, but we are all committed to make sure that her dreams and commitment will continue to be fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with no further ado, we'll hand over to Sam, who will represent the costing task team in the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have the slides. Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Mayer. I'm Vice President of Public Affairs at the End Fund and the chair of the costing task team Dr. Sose has put together. I think we have heard a huge amount already in terms of the rationale for why there is more focus on costing. And so what I may first do is just ask Dr. Sose if there's anything from your perspective that you haven't shared on the costing for why this team and why now.
Thank you, Sam. Just a few words on the costing. And clearly, as I said, when I just started, I wanted to know how much do we need to implement the roadmap. So that's how I realized that there were no costing for the roadmap. But looking at the situation further, I saw many missing pieces in terms of planning and strategic planning. Clearly, you have very specific costing with some disease-specific programs, but having a clear picture on what we need to be able to achieve the targets was clearly missing. And I was just comparing to health emergencies again. I said 3 weeks after the pandemic, when it was not even called a pandemic, we had a preparedness and response plan. This is a budget. So don't tell me it's perfect, because as we say in health emergencies, we need to be able to take decision with imperfect information, very partial information. So making sure that at least for NTDs, we have a clear target for resource mobilization is extremely important to be able to achieve our targets. That's why I thought, although it's challenging, we need to start working on this to make sure that we can know where we are in terms of costing and what are the real gaps we need to fill to be able to have a more accurate figure and use it, all of us, to be able to mobilize more resources and fill the gap. So I'll stop here to avoid making the presentation. Thank you. Stop.
Thank you, Dr. Sose. Okay, so we've just heard the prioritization there. And briefly, the goal of this team, I think costing is something that may take on different meanings to many of us, depending on the vantage point we have, the nature of our work and our contributions in the space. And as has been alluded to, it can be almost controversial at times, depending on what methodology is taken, how things are prioritized, etc. So the goal of this team is to better understand, I think, the investment required to deliver against the roadmap targets. And to be clear, we recognize, as again has been said, there is no one magic number. There is no sort of one specific number that can mean everything to everyone in the space, of course. The scope of this work is across all NTDs. It's across all countries. It's intended to reflect the fullest nature and ambition, I think, of the roadmap. And so what we can do, though, is better coordinate. We've heard a great deal this morning about coordination. We can better coordinate. We can better share information and understand what information is available. We can work with it in new ways, and we can better understand where the gaps are, so that, for example, in the global action plan that has been talked about already, the costing that can go behind that can be more comprehensive, it can be more accurate, and therefore more helpful to more of us in the community. So very briefly, this is just a list of the membership of the costing task team. I'm extremely grateful to my co-chair, Ian Jones from Site Savers. Thank you for your leadership and your expertise. And of course, we would be nowhere in this work were it not for the secretariat of Shoshan and Camilla and Chantal as well. So a huge thanks to everyone involved. And the membership listed here, we see representatives from a variety of different institutions who clearly bring different perspectives and experience to this work. Of course, we had to strike a balance and be practical and think of a relatively small number of people who could get together on a regular basis. We tried to balance that with thinking about a diversity of perspectives on what costing can mean and how it can come together. And so we have done that through this group thus far. But each person in this group, and many of them are in this room today and many others joining online, acts as a sort of a conduit to their own constituencies as well. And so it's very clear, this is not an endeavor solely undertaken by the people on this slide. We are all representatives of our own constituencies. And that brings me to the reason why today, I think, is probably the most important day in the work of the task team thus far, because what we can do is take you up to speed on where we are. But, this starts the opportunity to solicit feedback from the entire global community. And that's, after all, why we are here at the Global Partners Meeting. So before I pass it over to Shoshan to take us through some of the more technical aspects of the approach of the team, it's just very important to highlight a couple of what I hope are relatively obvious challenges that faced by the task team in the 2 months or so that we've been together as a formal group. Obviously limited time to get to this point, and so Sharshan will talk about the approach that we have taken with that limited time and how we've prioritized, but also the lack of data, and again, talking about the scope of the work across 20 diseases, forecasting data, various unit costs that have been developed for different purposes by different organizations in different contexts. And I think one of the biggest challenges for us is, that we've heard a lot again about the theme of cross-cutting approaches in the roadmap, but when it comes to what methodology and how we think about costing for cross-cutting approaches, obviously opens us up to a great deal of questions, and it requires better coordination with folks in other sectors, which we hope to begin through this meeting as well. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sharshan.
Thanks, Sam. Good morning, everyone. My name is Xiaoxian Huang. I'm a health economist at the WHO Global NTD Program, but also the secretary for this task team. Here we'll discuss our approach. Yes. Okay. When we began this work, we discussed how we should proceed, and we had two choices. We discussed either we focus on collating existing evidence based on what cost information available already in different area, or we directly build our costing based on modeling approach. There is pros and cons, and finally our choice was we should be focusing on collating the existing estimation, because one reason is that there are many works already done on costing, and those works should be highlighted and valued and used for resource mobilization. Another reason is that those cost estimation always very often linked to a very concrete work plan. So those costs is closer to the real actions that we want to take in the area, in different area. And also because we will have this global implementation plan covering 2025-2030, which will be more focused on how to reach the roadmap goals. That one will, the modeling approach will be a more proper methodology for that costing. And to contribute to that modeling building, we need some cost mapping to understand what knowledge we have in the field. So we've decided to focus on collating existing information and focus on the period 2023-2025 to reflect the urgent resource needs for continuing working in different areas. We began with data mapping across 20 NTDs. We indeed managed to get some cost information from the majority of NTDs. And we also first took a look at what we can do inside of NTD communities. Those areas are global and regional support, preventive chemotherapy, case management, and many other actions such as monitoring and evaluation. And we can see that we have some cost information across entities, but most of them are not comprehensive. This shows a first first idea about the gap in terms of the cost information. And then we move to those actions beyond NTD's control, which are also critical to our success. They are vector control, WASH, and veterinary public health. In those areas, we have even less cost information. One reason for that is that the resource mobilization does not happen that necessarily inside of NTD community, we need to work. This is what we call the cross-sectoral collaboration. We need to work with the other sectors, and we need to understand their priorities and to highlight the visibility, to raise the visibility of NTDs in those actions. So how to work on those areas? We also wanted to hear from this room how we can address the resource needs beyond NTD's control. All in all, this is the picture where we show what cost information included in the following slide, where we will discuss the results. Before talking about the results, we also want to highlight this gap of information also previously reflected in the roadmap's heat map, where we've already seen a lot of red across NTDs, and we still yet to define our plan how to reduce those red area. I think that's where the implementation plan will be a very helpful tool for us to concretely plan our actions. We would like to present results in form of a journey because it has not finished, and we will show where we are so far. We began with discussing with WHO focal points and partners on what WHO's recommended priority actions, and we got some cost information based on those discussions for 8 NTDs. Then we also get some country level data, mainly focused on mass drug administration and survey costs for diseases from African region and 2 other diseases from Southeast Asian region. And then we add on that the information we got from several global initiatives for chikungunyasis, trachoma, rabies, arbovirus control, and some information from the literature. We estimate some cost for treatment, but bear in mind this is a very partial estimate on the cost, just to see what minimum we need to prepare for. And so far what we get is that the so far estimated resource needs, excluding drug, for 2023-2025, at least 2 billion. But we have also many other questions where we have no idea about how much that costs. And I think if you have good ideas on how we could complement the picture, then we will be very happy to discuss. We will have half an hour discussion this afternoon after the lunch, and we look forward to hear from you. And of course, we cannot discuss the cost without mentioning the tremendous drug donation that the NTD community benefits. This is, I think, a very not comparable advantage that we have comparing to many other disease programs. So we should highlight that. And we also want to hear from you what will be the best way to properly highlight the value of donation and how to further better plan this continuous support.
Thanks very much, Shan. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so just last a few words to say that we also wanted to take a look from the strategic area point of view, and here we can see for the moment it seems that the preventive chemotherapy is the highest cost driver, but bear in mind this is a partial picture. The other is lower cost, mainly due to that we haven't costed the comprehensive needs. For example, monitoring and evaluation here, we just included primarily the assessment and the survey for 5 diseases. However, monitoring and evaluation require much more than that. And with that, I hand over to Sam to talk about next steps.
Thank you. It's the worst position to be in. We're late and it's time for lunch and everyone's hungry. So very quickly, the next steps, the mandate of the task team is through September initially to present to the SAG meeting then with more information, critically informed by feedback from this group. Beyond September, we've talked about the need for a more global action plan, implementation plan that will be costed to. And if I can leave you just with one request, we understand that there's Q&A after lunch. We have some initial questions for you as well, which hopefully we can leave up on the screens over lunch. So please take a quick look at those and over lunch when you can. And please try not to do any math. There's a lot of numbers there, and I see a lot of people taking pictures and adding things up, which is a natural inclination, but we recognize it's not quite that simple. So.
Thanks very much to Sam and to Xiaoshan and to the whole costing team. And we'll leave the questions up. There's a lot to process. So I also give permission to grab Sam and Xiaoshan over lunch if you want to discuss it further. Before I let you go for lunch, Albus wanted me to mention that there's an NTD exhibition on the mezzanine above the canteen up the stairs, which will be changed. I think the pictures and the panels will be changed every day, but there's pictures up there for of the NTDs, and it'd be great for you to have your photos taken with them or to take photos and appreciate the beautiful pictures that the team have chosen. And I think that closes the session, and you can all go and get lunch. Thank you very much for this morning.